The first time they locked me out of my own company's server, I assumed it was a security glitch. The second time, my voting rights were temporarily suspended pending review. The third time I sat in the back of a glass-walled boardroom and watched my co-founder present our 5-year vision to investors, without my name on the founding slide. That's when I understood. They weren't forcing me out. They were rewriting history. Quietly. Professionally. Legally. And they believed I had no leverage left. They were wrong. My name is Ava Sinclair. I built Sentinel Core from the floor of a 1-bedroom flat in London with a borrowed laptop and a second-hand server rack humming beside my kitchen table. I wrote the original breach detection engine myself, line by line, through nights that bled into mornings. Nathan Cole joined 3 months later. He had polish. He had connections. He had the kind of confidence investors mistake for competence. I had architecture. Together we looked balanced. But balance shifts when valuation enters the room. When our Series B funding closed and expansion into the United States became inevitable, something in Nathan changed. Not dramatically, subtly. His language shifted from protection to scale. From security first to growth first. He began entertaining a data partnership with an American analytics conglomerate. High revenue, aggressive distribution but dangerously broad backend access. I told him it created a vulnerability window in our encryption layering. He told me I was being cautious. The board called it fear-based obstruction. I documented every objection anyway. 3 months later the accusation landed. Unauthorized backdoor code discovered in our core infrastructure. Access keys tied to my credentials. Activity logs printed, highlighted, passed around a polished walnut table while external counsel observed in silence. I remember staring at the timestamp more than the allegation. 3:17 a.m. I don't write code at 3:17 a.m. anymore. I stopped doing that years ago when burnout nearly ended me. Within 48 hours my system access vanished. My executive bio changed to former CTO. Internal communications referred to leadership stabilization. Industry blogs began speculating about technical misconduct. Investors called with rehearsed concern. It's better if you step aside gracefully, one advised. Protect the brand. It was almost elegant. Frame the cautious founder. Replace her with scalable leadership. Proceed with expansion unchallenged. Except for one oversight. You don't accuse a systems architect of manipulation and expect her not to audit the system. When Sentinel Core first went live, I embedded a passive integrity monitor beneath our visible architecture. It wasn't malicious. It didn't interfere. It simply observed structural injections at kernel level and mirrored them to an encrypted external ledger. Immutable. Independent. Invisible to executive overrides. The so-called backdoor code hadn't originated from my development environment. It was injected remotely during a scheduled maintenance window. Credentials used: Nathan Cole. Location trace: his residential network. I didn't confront him. I didn't send an email. I didn't threaten litigation. I waited. Because timing is leverage. 3 weeks later, the company hosted a global investor livestream announcing our US rollout. New York. Nathan stood center stage, composed, articulate, speaking about integrity and forward vision. A slide appeared outlining the new executive structure. My role eliminated. My equity diluted under a risk mitigation clause. Applause followed. I stood. There is a particular silence that falls over a room when something unscripted begins. Investors don't fear conflict. They fear uncertainty. I requested one final projection before the vote. My laptop connected to the central display. I showed the kernel-level audit log. Timestamp. Injection pathway. Credential authentication. IP trace mapping directly to Nathan's registered home address. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I presented. Nathan attempted to interrupt. Called it misinterpretation and internal misfire, a technical anomaly. So I displayed archived emails. Internal threads referencing the need to neutralize resistance. A message from Nathan to a board member. If Ava won't align, we realign without her. The livestream was still broadcasting. Then I revealed the safeguard they never anticipated. When my executive credentials were revoked without documented violation verified by independent audit, An automated compliance report triggered regulatory review under UK corporate governance codes and US expansion disclosure laws. It had already been filed the moment my access disappeared. You could feel the shift physically. Investors stopped checking phones. Legal counsel leaned forward. The board members who had avoided eye contact with me for weeks suddenly couldn't look away. Within 24 hours, the expansion deal was suspended. An independent forensic audit launched. My equity dilution reversed. Nathan resigned publicly to pursue new opportunities. The board offered me the CEO position. I declined. Not because I lacked ambition, but because power without structure is temporary. I negotiated permanent oversight of governance architecture, veto authority over high-risk partnerships, and automatic transparency triggers requiring multi-signature approval for executive overrides. I didn't want applause. I wanted safeguards. 6 months later, Sentinel Corps expanded into the United States. Carefully. Strategically. No compromised access. No vulnerability windows. Our valuation doubled. Not because we chased speed. Because we built trust. Nathan attempted another startup. His pitch decks were polished. His charisma intact. But trust, once fractured publicly, doesn't reconstruct easily. Investors smiled politely. Few committed. People often misunderstand revenge. They think it's emotional, loud, reactive. Strategic revenge is patient. It's documentation instead of confrontation. It's architecture instead of argument. It's understanding that narrative control belongs to whoever holds the evidence when the spotlight turns on. They believed deleting my access deleted my leverage. But when you design the system, leverage isn't in the login credentials. It's in the foundations no one else understands. The last time I walked into that boardroom, my name was restored to the founding slide. Not as a symbol. As a structural fact. I didn't smile. I simply opened my laptop, reviewed the quarterly security report, and approved the next phase of expansion. Because power isn't reclaiming your seat at the table. It's redesigning the table so no one can quietly remove you again. And if there's one lesson I learned, it's this. Never mistake silence for weakness. Sometimes silence is just strategy compiling. And when it executes, it doesn't crash the system. It rewrites it.